Yo, what up? I might as well just start this video with an anecdote, and then get into the broader question of why I'm talking about this stuff. Um, I had a girlfriend, and it was a serious relationship. We considered getting married. We considered a lot of long-term things. But she was just my girlfriend. And she was not vegetarian. She was not vegan. And I remember I said to her very simply and bluntly at one point, look, you're thinking about this the wrong way. And fundamentally, it's a peculiar kind of racism. I said to her, you have to take this as seriously as if I had brown skin and I was born in India and I was telling you, you've got to follow these dietary rules or nothing. You can't marry me. You can't really be my long-term girlfriend. You can't really have a meaningful relationship with me if you don't live up to these rules. And I pointed out to her, I said, look, because, she was opposed to this. I said, your whole attitude, all of your expectations would be different if I had brown skin and was born and raised in India. I'm not saying she'd choose to do it, but she'd shrug her shoulders and think, well, that's the price of admission. That's the cost of entry. If this particular man is the man I want to marry, then I've got to be vegetarian or vegan or whatever it is. And maybe you have to have a certain type of religious ceremony at your wedding. All kinds of other implications are possible. Maybe you've got to take off your shoes in a particular way at the door. Maybe there are all sorts of other magical and religious implications. Now, there are some ways in which veganism is not like any religion in the world. There are some ways in which it is profoundly different from any religion in the world. But when talking on this level of our personal lives, sometimes it can very closely resemble a religion in exactly this way. Love me or leave me. And with that girlfriend, that was the reason why we broke it off. That was the reason why I broke off the relationship with her. I did make a bunch of compromises, but she sent me an email at one point saying, she'd tried to be vegetarian for like a couple of days, not even vegan, and she hated it and resented it and didn't want to do it. And I wrote back saying, get a new boyfriend, because it's over. The email was not that short, but it really was that decisive, because we'd already talked it through. We'd already, laid all the cards on the table. She was smart. She was hardworking. She had a lot of redeeming qualities, that girl. A lot of things I liked about her. Morally, ethically, she was a pretty despicable person, to be quite honest with you. That was not the only issue. I mean, that actually reflected other aspects of her character ethically and morally. And, that can be attractive in a woman. It can be attractive to be with a woman who you think is smart, and you can recognize she's kind of ruthless. She's kind of immoral in a certain way. But I've got to say, I never look back and regret that I broke up with her. And I think she really is the kind of person who would slit a pig's throat. I think she'd slit a human being's throat without much hesitation or remorse. And I remember actually being around some animals with her. I remember there was a particular cow that she had a history with. She knew this cow. It was not quite a pet cow, but she'd known this cow for years. And because we talked about this stuff so much, I asked her. I said, "So would you eat this cow? Like, would you eat this cow if someone else killed it for you?" And it was very emotional for her. She said, "No, I would never eat this cow." And I said, "Yeah, but you eat different cows every day. What sense does this make?" Anyway, this anecdote is expanding beyond its utility for this video. At this moment, today, the day this video is being uploaded, I'm still receiving questions for a Q&A session that I'm doing via Patreon. So people who are my patrons have sent me questions, and they very generously sent me $1 each Thank you for your support. I completely intend to take that money, fly to Thailand, live in luxury, film myself swimming in a bikini on the beach, etc. That was funnier than I thought it would be for me. And I told the joke myself. Tragically, many of the vegans who raise money this way for charity or for activism, the actual charity and their actual activism is going on vacation in Thailand. One of my patrons is a guy called Mike on Raw. I'll give the link to his channel below this video. I think the tone and nature of his content has changed just recently. And he sent me some email. I think he's been reconsidering what he's talking about and how he's talking about, partly in response to my videos, which is wonderful. And he had a recent video just a couple days ago where he was really, in a very down-to-earth way, reflecting on the misery of him being the only vegan in his family. So he's married. His wife is not vegan. And then beyond that, his extended family, nobody's vegan, so aunts and uncles and kids and grandkids. And he's in a lot of situations that give him misery. But anyway, thank you. I mean, genuinely, thank you for your support. I think he's given me $1 a month, which is wonderful. And he's staying in touch with me through Patreon, so I'm happy to hear from him. And he has sent me some questions that I'm going to answer in the Q&A. But right now, I'm going to respond to that video of his. Another friend of mine online, who I'll leave anonymous, he, at almost the same time, just yesterday, he wrote to me talking about his family situation. And that guy feels bad. I mean, Mike, they're struggling with the same issue. Feeling bad in imposing arbitrary moral requirements on your family around you. So again, I don't know if Mike uses exactly these terms, but Mike and this other friend of mine, just to generalize a little bit, they reflect on things like, well, who am I to not let my relatives bring meat into my house, and how does that actually work? Do I actually impose a rule on someone? Okay, you're not allowed to cook meat in my kitchen. Well, what if they buy a sandwich or a hot dog at a shop down the street and they just finish eating it in your living room? Are you going to kick them out of the house? Are you going to make them stand on the porch? You can hear my windows open, actually. I don't know if you can hear the birds singing. Is it like a cigarette where you force someone to stand in the backyard while they smoke a cigarette? How does this really work with people you are supposed to love and respect? Because the reality is the type of moral distinction involved is one of where you're expressing contempt for people. You're saying to people, one way or another, however politely, I don't respect you, and I don't love this about you. It's something that really brings about terrible conflict. And again, for both of them, both Mike and I think part of the struggle is this unease about the arbitrariness of it. Like, they're comfortable with the statements of principle about veganism, but then when we get down to practice, okay, so you're already married to this woman, but now you've become vegan. Again, this is why, coming back to my anecdote, this is why the comparison to religion is significant. If somebody gets married to me, and then I convert to a new religion afterward, she is entitled to complain that this is not what she signed up for. Okay? If I get married to someone as an atheist, and then for some mysterious reason I become passionate about Buddhism, and I'm all the way into Theravada Buddhism, overnight I convert to Protestant Christianity, all of a sudden I think, boy, Martin Luther, yeah. This all of a sudden this really does it for me and changed my whole life. From my perspective, I think that's a reason to get divorced. For someone, a fundamental change in who you are, such as converting to a new religion after the marriage, they didn't sign up for that. That wasn't in the contract. They married you for the person you were and the beliefs you had and the values you had and the ethics you had at the time you got married. Now, a lot of other things are much more slippery. Maybe you got married to someone before they became a gambling addict. After you've been married for 5 years, they get addicted to gambling. Gambling is not a religion, but it can transform your whole life the same way. Woo! All right, that poster is about to take off. All right, I don't know. By the way, I really wondered if I should have like a Patreon contest and give that poster to someone for free, send it to someone in the mail, or if I should roll it up and take it with me to China. But I don't know. It's coming off the wall already, so we'll see what happens with my my poster that's been in the background all this time. Look, it's real. This stuff, it's not deep, but it's real. These are the issues we all really struggle with. I just made another video the other day that has arbitrary in the title. I think part of the key here is really being comfortable with what's arbitrary in your life and admitting to everyone involved that because something is arbitrary doesn't mean it's evil, doesn't mean it's wrong. It also doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean it's a perfect solution. But yes, in the same way that a Hindu living in Western society has to draw up a bunch of lines. There was a real controversy in India when the technology of the bicycle was first introduced to India. And Hindus thought the bicycle was immoral and nobody should be allowed to buy one because the seats were made out of leather. This is obviously reflecting the era. They didn't have plastic bicycle seats yet. And there were public protests in the streets. There was political organized opposition. There was an anti-bicycle movement. And as a vegan, I can relate. Now, ultimately, that movement lost because at that time, the bicycle was such a fundamental advance in whatever you want to say, civilization. Technologically, it was really a breakthrough. Something relatively poor people could use. And at a time when the only alternative was riding a horse, bicycles were really a big deal for a long time. So the bicycle nevertheless did proliferate in India, and people did use leather seats, cow leather, and that contradiction existed within Indian society despite the opposition to it. Yes, there are arbitrary lines we have to draw. Anytime you buy a product that has sugar as an ingredient, you probably know this, it could in theory be non-vegan sugar, and it might not be. There are some trace ingredients. Some people say, well, can you buy Cheerios? Cheerios is a breakfast cereal. Can you not buy Cheerios? When there's some incredibly small percentage, way less than 1%, that might be non-vegan derived, etc. Ultimately, yes, for your own life, you have to make those arbitrary distinctions, and you have to impose it on others. The irony is, the arbitrary distinctions you make in your life, you don't impose on strangers, you don't impose on people you hate, people you despise, people you disagree with. You impose those arbitrary distinctions most on the people you love. In this guy's case, his wife, who isn't vegan, and who married this guy before he became vegan, she didn't sign up for this. And now all of a sudden, maybe he's in the position of saying, look, if it's in my kitchen, I won't tolerate this because it's immoral. If it's being bought with my money, I won't tolerate this because it's immoral. It's hard. It's hard. And I think really one of the most honest things you could say to her is, look, you have to take this as seriously as if I had brown skin, as if I were born and raised in India. And it's really worth questioning. Why do we take that so seriously? We're talking about right and wrong. We're talking about moral and immoral. Why would it matter if my ancestors were vegan? If I can say to you, in my family for 1,000 years, everyone has been vegetarian. Some people in India can boast that way. Their whole family has been vegetarian for 1,000 years. I can't. Nobody in my family is vegetarian. Nobody in my family is vegan. But the truth is, if something is right or wrong, now, today, if it's a positive difference we can make now, that's what matters. That's what's important. That's priceless. That's what's tremendously important. And actually, the question of what somebody did 1,000 years ago is almost completely meaningless by contrast. This is about the difference we can make and the potential we have as individuals, as a family, as a couple, or what have you. And I know it sounds like a trite and overused phrase, but I think the way out of this is keeping it real, is being 100% honest with yourself, being 100% honest with your loved ones, and saying, look, I recognize the contradictions. I recognize that it doesn't make sense. Like asking you to smoke a cigarette on the porch and not in the living room. There's some people like that with alcohol, where they say, look, if you go and get drunk in a bar, that's fine, but I'm not going to let you drink alcohol in my house, especially if they're an ex-alcoholic. A lot of people feel that way. They say they don't want alcohol in their lives. They don't want this purchased with their own money, etc. You can recognize, look, this is arbitrary. It's not perfectly rational. It's not a perfect system. It's not a perfect solution. but I love you. I respect you. I need you to respect this and come along on this journey with me. And if you can't, you got to get a new boyfriend.